We're back again. Had a little bit of time off, but we're good to go. We'd like to welcome Adam to the podcast today. Firstly, Adam, thanks for jumping on. We really appreciate it. So thanks for that, mate.
Welcome, man.
Right, let's kind of go from the beginning then, because listen, you've had quite a quick rise to fame in essence. Everything's happened, I think, quite quickly, seemingly. Growing up as a child, then, were you always ambitious, or did you always feel like slightly different from the others?
So growing up as a child, in all honesty, like I was completely different to where I am now. A lot of people now would like describe me as more like extroverted, more like out there. As a child, I was most definitely an introvert, most definitely shy. But I guess what started to break that barrier was when, growing up as a child, I never really knew I wanted to get into finance or wanted a whole bunch of money, or I never really knew what I wanted to do, to be fair. It's more or less just basic things. I know I wanted to be an astronaut, never really knew specific career path I wanted to go down or how I was even going to choose a career. What I did decide to get into was dancing. So when I was like really young, I think around like 9, 10 maybe, I started to get into dancing, started to go to competitions. Again, I was like not a natural dancer or whatever, like it was terrible. Like my first few competitions, I did place and win like trophies and stuff, but it was nothing like material. It didn't really account for anything. It was more just like experience, like, and to get out there, to be fair. But then I think what happened quite quickly was that I did start to like rapidly grow in terms of dancing. And I've always just been like a fast kind of learner. So when I really want to learn something, when I'm like into it and passionate about it, then I can pick things up quickly. And so I then qualified to compete sort of worldwide. So I'd gone to like Italy, Poland, Germany, a whole bunch of different countries. And in Italy, I'd actually competed at the European Dance Championships. And I think this was when I was like 11 or 12. I was then ranked 3rd in Europe for like solos or whatever. And then from there, again, I was featured in the news, then got into like different shows. I performed at like the O2 and stuff like that. So dancing was quite big. And again, it was something that like, I was motivated to do, passionate about. But then I think sort of going into A-levels, I then stopped. And then obviously decided to get into business, trading, the whole entrepreneurship thing, etc. So that's what life was like sort of in my younger years.
Okay, so in terms of the dance then, was that a genuine career path for you? Did you feel that as a younger kind of child and your parents that, listen, we can potentially do this, or was it just nah?
In all honesty, I didn't really know, to be fair. It was going well at the time, so it was like, okay, cool, let me pursue this. But at the same time, I was always into other things, like I remember sort of just on YouTube, always like looking at people like making money online and that kind of thing. And so that's what got me down that route. And I remember sort of researching like the e-commerce industry, the dropshipping industry. And so that was like the birth of my first ever business. I remember sort of buying jewelry online from the US. I would more or less just order it and selling it around school, like pinky rings that I'd honestly get. People are going to hate me when they're watching this, but honestly, I'd get them for like less than £1 and sell them for like £25. So it's like I'm 25xing my money in terms of ROI, like that's incredible. So then what I'd done was obviously, I decided to move it online to make everything more professional, website, etc. And it was like, cool, made a couple hundred just from like close friends and people that I knew from my school, etc., who really wanted the items, the jewelry. And then obviously looking at Facebook ads, etc. I just ran random Facebook ads, not really knowing what I was doing. So just like sort of blind shooting Facebook ads. I didn't really have much of a big ad spend. I'd probably spend about £10 on a different ad set, test loads of different ad sets, and sales would just start coming in. I guess it was more or less just also a trend. I'd saw other pages doing the exact same thing. I'd more or less just ran the same ad sets consistently, and my sales would honestly just skyrocket. I remember making like thousands in just a few weeks. And honestly, to me, that was like the most money that I would ever made. I think I was like about 15, 16 at the time. And it was just like incredible. It was like, what do I do with all this money? And that's obviously when you start like just doing stupid stuff. Like you can't really drive or anything or buy a car. So it's like, damn, let me just designer clothes and that kind of thing. Just whatever people were talking about, you just kind of just buy it. And that was it, to be fair.
How did you feel when you actually made that, like your first 1K? When you looked at your sales and saw 1K, what were you thinking? Who did you tell?
Yeah, no, it was kind of like, damn, like, we're really doing this. Like, I don't really know who to tell. In fact, I think I'd kept it quiet. So for the first few months, for the first few years, I'd actually kept it quiet. And I remember what actually happened was, I don't know why this had happened, but a teacher from my school, she's actually the head of business. She'd heard from other people that obviously I was doing some like really shady stuff, some really dodgy stuff, and that wasn't the case at all. So she thought like I was drug dealing, I was doing fraud, I was doing something that I shouldn't be doing. And that wasn't the case at all. This was like throughout sixth form, and when I'd had a whole bunch of sales coming in. So I think at one point, she'd taken my phone. God knows whether she was able to do that or not, but she had my phone taken and she was like, right, we're going through your phone. Obviously, in going through my phone, she couldn't find anything related to like drugs, fraud, or whatever. So she was like, right, how do you make your money? Didn't have a job at the time. I never really had like any type of like retail job or work experience or whatever, because it's kind of just all been online business. And so obviously in going through my phone, it's kind of like, where'd you get your money from? I'd open up one of my stores and she was just like her reaction was just incredible, to be fair. It's like she didn't know what to say. And her only reaction was like, do you pay tax on this? And at the time I knew nothing about taxes. I completely wasn't. But called HMRC, sort of found out about taxes and how I had to pay them, etc., etc. They would have charged me interest on the taxes that I didn't pay for the money that I'd made in previous years. But essentially, I'd just written them a letter, and they sort of waived all the fees, etc. And they were kind of just like, look, you're young, it's cool, just pay sort of the tax that you owe. And I'd done that, and that was really it, to be fair.
That's interesting.
So to touch on your childhood a little bit more then,
Yeah.
for you, was that a bigger deal? Because how would you view your childhood? Difficult or an easy childhood?
No, so it wasn't really difficult, neither easy, to be fair. Like, it was like my parents, it was like, in terms of sort of funding my dance, it was like thousands going out in terms of like being able to travel to different countries, etc., etc., which was most definitely a lot of money for us. Like, I mean, my mom would work hard just to make sure that we'd go on a holiday once a year, if that, or like a couple times if we were lucky. And it was a lot of work to like be able to provide for like myself and my siblings and stuff. So obviously in seeing that, it was most definitely a lot. I would get pocket money and small things such as that, but it was like the money that I'd made was disgustingly high in compared to like how much I'd get for like the whole pocket money side of things. So it got to a point where it's like I would just tell my mom, like, I don't want any money from you, to be fair. Like, I don't need it, to be fair. It's like, what would you do when you can buy everything that you want to, and like sort of almost do whatever you'd want to as a child? Because it's like there's not really much that you can do as a child. Like, you can't really travel yourself, etc., etc. It's more just, well, for me, the people that I was around, it was more just like games, clothing, that kind of thing. So it's like, what more do I need? And that was really it as a child. So it was most definitely impactful into my life. And I mean, now I'm probably making more than however much my mum's making, to be fair, which is crazy.
So for you then, I know a lot of people I've spoke to about businesses, whether it be sport, whether it be trading, for you guys, like,
yeah,
they feel like something needed to happen for them to get to where they are today. So for you, the case of the whole jewelry business and making money, was that like a necessary thing for you to get you to the point of where you are today? It almost gave you the, how do you say it, sort of, it gave you what you needed just from the start jump.
Yeah, so I'll sort of explain the journey. So obviously in running a jewelry business and sort of just selling jewelry online, I knew I didn't want to continue doing it. For one, the jewelry was like really cheap, really fixed. So there were returns. Like, it wasn't just a smooth business. There were returns, there were unhappy customers, etc. For me, it was just like build the brand as quickly as possible, cash in, and then put it into like another store. And that was kind of the birth of like my e-commerce journey. It was more or less just testing different products, opening different stores, different brands. I never really put my name on it, even if it did make a lot of money, just because I didn't really want that backlash of like, oh, you're selling XYZ, and that's it, in all honesty. But then what had happened, obviously, in gathering a lot of cash and just having like a lot of money in bank accounts, I'd looked into other streams of income that I could get into. So looking online, you see the whole trading, etc., etc. And that's sort of what I geared to at first. But obviously in gearing towards that, I remember going to different events in London, like kind of forex events. What you'd find is like a whole bunch of sketchy characters that honestly they just want your money, to be fair. God knows whether that, like, their trading ability is most definitely questionable. They couldn't really tell you the basics of like technical analysis, fundamentals, different market concepts. The knowledge was most definitely questionable, but it was more a thing where if you pay, you're making thousands a day or thousands a week. And so I was interested in forex, but not really enough to partake in it. But obviously I spoke to like family, friends about it. And I actually had like a family member who was a market maker, and market makers essentially help sort of move the liquidity in the markets, so like move the prices of certain asset classes, etc. People usually say that quite unethical because they just want to make money themselves. It's probably true in all honesty. But regardless, it was like I had a family member who could kind of give me like a non-bullshit approach to the markets. And with that, I'd then sort of just kept picking at their brains, and all they'd really taught me was market concepts. They never really taught me how to trade. So market concepts being, for example, inflation rates. Inflation rates this year have been on the rise. I think the US inflation rate came out last week, Wednesday. And it was valued at, I think, 5 point something percent. It was above expectations and it was above the previous month's inflation reading. And when inflation is high, companies' costs are also high. So the stock prices of companies fall because you've got an increase in oil and gas prices, you've got an increase in heating, lighting, etc. And this causes companies' valuations to drop. Their share prices drop, and people usually rush to safe havens. And safe haven assets are assets such as gold. Like gold will never really drop in value, people say. So whenever there's like a crash in the markets, people usually rush to different commodities. And even crypto can be seen as like a safe haven now. So I was learning about different market concepts like buy into gold when other companies are dropping due to high inflation. And so I remember even last week I placed a gold trade and made just short of like £10,000 in a matter of hours. And I never day trade, I always trade for the long term. So even when I place a trade on the forex market, so at least be for a few days or a few weeks. But learning all of these market concepts, it more or less allowed me to understand the markets on a fundamental level. So it's like, as long as there was something going on in the economy, as long as I understood what it was and how it affected the markets, I could make money. And so I'd learned fundamentals before learning technicals. And technicals are more or less like your support resistance levels, whereby people like to assume that if a line touches a line, then stock price or an asset price will move in a certain direction. They are reliable to an extent. But yeah, I feel like people kind of learn technicals, trade off technicals. It can be somewhat of a gamble depending on what else you're looking at in the markets.
Okay. So talk us through then your first interaction with the stock market then. So, I mean, for a lot of people watching, you know, and even for myself to a certain extent, like I know it's viewed trading and things like that as almost a gamble, a little bit of a risk. So for you, talk us through your first experiences with it and if they were successful or not.
Yeah, so my first experience with it. So I always say to people, like when you're first getting into the markets, it's not even about how much you put in, what you invest in, or what you've researched. It's more or less just proof of concept. So for me, I think I'd invested. So as soon as I turned 18, I was more or less investing. So this was August of 2019, I believe.
Okay.
Was it 2020? Yeah. 2019.
Not long ago.
Honestly. And so I remember I was kind of just investing right at the end of the last bull run. So the last like sort of increase in the stock market before the coronavirus crash. And I didn't really know essentially what I was buying. I was more or less just buying stocks based on their dividends. So based on how much they'd pay in terms of dividends. I was buying stocks based on if other people were talking about the company. And I did see a return. So I did see a return on my money. I think I was making like, I invested a couple hundred, saw that increase a little bit, started to invest a couple thousand, that increased a little bit, started to invest more. I don't really know what I was doing, but at the same time, I'd also broken into the finance industry. And obviously breaking into the finance industry, I learned a lot about financial statements, how to value companies, how to draw up different valuation methods, discounted cash flows, et cetera. And I could just draw like a really good valuation of a company and sort of predict where the company's share price should be, dependent on if they stick to their 5-year cash flow forecast, which is quite, well, not easy to do, but it's like when you're doing it day in, day out, you start to pick things up quite quickly. And obviously in doing this, it was more like I'd looked at the stocks that I'd owned. A lot of the dividend payers that I owned didn't really have that growth potential. So I decided to sell everything at the start of the year and sort of just switch up my entire investment strategy. I did get lucky. A lot of people will be like, oh, you're an investment genius, you're a stock genius, like tell me what stocks to buy. I will admit that I was most definitely lucky. By the time that I'd sold, in February, you'd see the start of the COVID crash, and that would play out into March, April before it then started to increase. And so I'd invested what you could say was like the bottom of the market or near the bottom of the market. And this was the same time that I switched up my strategy, moving into more growth companies and into more like the high risk speculative investments, because their cash flows for certain really small companies, they were due to double within the next year. And then in some cases, even 10x within a 5-year period. So it's like, okay, cool. Let me take the gamble. Let me invest into those stocks. But what makes it less of a gamble and more of a, I don't know, just a lot less of a gamble. I wouldn't even say that it's a gamble, is the fact that you have audited financial statements. These financial statements are audited by a third party, put under a lot of scrutiny. And so you can trust them. And if you know how to sort of look at a set of financial statements and look at the balance sheet and be like, okay, cool, this balance sheet is solid. The company's got cash flow. They're burning cash at a rate in which is slow enough for them to still invest in the business for the next 5 years. And even if their cash burn rate did increase a little bit and they did need to, I don't know, invest into a new product or a new set of offices, etc., they would still be able to last throughout the long run, just until they can start to turn over a revenue and then turn over a profit. And likewise, obviously, looking at the P&L statement, you want to look at increased revenues, but you don't just want to look at the increased revenues. You want to look at the rate in which those revenues are increasing. So the revenue could increase 5% a year, year on year. That's too small. For me anyway, I want to go for the more high risk. I want to see this company's revenue increase 50% year on year. So then there's that 50% revenue growth. Even though the company's growing, it's growing at a lot more of a rapid rate than the company that's just growing 5% in terms of revenue year on year. So it's kind of like, as long as you can analyze companies, then you're more or less good. And it's far from a gamble than what a lot of people maybe actually believe.
One thing I've taken so far from you, and I think many people will, is being a deep thinker. I reckon has helped you a lot. I don't know whether you recognize that or something like that, but a lot of people I find it's quite black and white. It's either yes or a no. Whereas for you, I feel like going into depth as much as you are, for people looking to get into trading, would you say this is almost like a tool they definitely need? They need to be able to think.
Yeah, because
deeply.
Yeah, because trading most definitely isn't like a yes or no answer. It's open to a lot of interpretation. A lot of people, when they get into the forex market, they're like, okay, cool, I've got a trading setup. Should I take this trade, yes or no? And it's kind of like, I don't know. I can't predict where the price of it will go. Obviously, I can add my opinion, but then my opinion will only get you so far. And the aim with trading forex isn't to constantly be right. It's a probability game. It's just to be right more times than you're wrong. And when you are right more times than you're wrong, to turn over more of a profit, it's most definitely a probability game, because there is no way you can accurately be right 100% of the time. It's almost impossible. I've had months whereby I've had more losing trades than winning trades, but the trades that I'd won just outweighed the trades that I'd lost. And it's more of just like a realization. You need to come to that realization. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing like an unrealistic expectation, and you're going to lose chasing the unrealistic expectation, and then sort of lose that momentum and lose that sort of drive to actually get to that goal. And the same thing with stocks is, I was talking about a concept just the other day with Harold's school, and it was a concept whereby it's kind of like investing in stocks is extremely liquid, but you need to find sort of a level of competence. And your level of competence essentially is a level in which you've sort of got a company and you've valued that company, and you've also valued that company for the future and where you predict for that company to go. Because the stock market is really liquid, we could literally buy a company today and sell it today. And if we constantly do that, we're not being competent with our trades. We're not being smart with our investments. In the stock market, obviously, if you invest for the long term, statistically, you're more likely to win. If I had a graph of the S&P 500, you'd see that in the long term, it constantly goes up, and the S&P 500 tracks the US economy. So the US economy constantly goes up. You look at it over a decade period, over the past 20 years, again, just constantly going up, but it has had anomalies. And if you invest for the short term, you may be investing in one of those anomalies whereby it dips. If you have a level of competence, however, you only invest during those dips, because those dips would then be your opportunities. And because you're investing for the long term, you're going to catch those long-term gains. And so it's kind of like you need to think deep enough to be able to come to a lot of realizations, understand a lot of market concepts, and sit back and analyze things from just like a long-term perspective. And so it's kind of like, if you're unable to sort of gauge that, not even the investing isn't for you. There's going to be a type of investment for everyone, but you just need to find a strategy that aligns with the way in which you can think and the way in which you can kind of like understand and analyze and approach into the markets.
Okay. Wait, so Adam, did anyone actually introduce you to like stocks, forex, or did you just come across it yourself and decide, you know what?
It was kind of like I came across it myself, and sort of in going into it, I'd seen like a fair few good results. And it was kind of like that for me was enough proof of concept to really take it seriously. So I've studied with people from Bloomberg, etc., and really got to learn from that. I've gone to firms such as DRW. They're based in Bank, and they're like a firm that's 30 floors up. Their office is one of the best offices that I've ever been to. Like tons of food, everyone there is just solid. They've got games in their office, etc. People going with like socks and sandals and shorts and stuff, and it's crazy. But it's like, it's more or less just constantly learning and constantly being able to like adapt to different market scenarios and constantly asking why. Like you said, Sam, with the deep thinking, it's almost like when something's happening in the market, I kind of need to understand why. If my entire portfolio has gone down, I don't think I've picked a ton of bad stocks. I think it's just the overall economy shifting, and it's understanding where that shift is coming from. And then that's really it, to be fair.
So how you mentioned there about obviously some months, obviously you get losses. So for you, how do you deal with the losses? You know, and because I know for a lot of people they'll be thinking, right, I've taken a loss here. I know you said almost your wins can almost outweigh the losses, but is there ever a case for you where it's like, shit, this is actually, I've got to be a bit careful here because I'm on a bit of a downward spiral, or is it the self-confidence that, you know, this is fine?
No, 100%. So right now, I've opened up an ISA portfolio, and in my ISA portfolio, essentially, it's just completely tax-free gains. You have an allowance of 20K a year. Any dividends or capital gains that you pay, completely tax-free. And with that, I probably started the year, the account was probably trading at about £40,000. I'd opened it only a few months before, sort of doubled the portfolio. Right now it's trading at about £30,000. So within a few month period, it's dropped about 25%. And the reason being is ultimately because of the overall economy. The overall economy has had hyperinflation has almost started to take effect. It's causing valuations to just drop. Stocks are dropping, and the first stocks that are drop are going to be the small cap companies, because small caps are what I invest in. They're really volatile. They can literally move 10-20% in just a day. And they're going to be the first companies to drop, simply because they don't have a lot of cash available. The companies with the big cash balances, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, they're going to be able to adapt to different markets. Some of these smaller companies, there could be a change in the economy, such as lockdown coming forth. If these smaller companies only have stores and don't have a big online presence, they're going to collapse. Like it's a no-brainer. So it's like the small cap companies are always the first to go. And so right now, my companies are the companies that are taking the biggest hits. But for me, I like to build a conviction on all of my companies. So conviction would be, I'm buying this company because of X, Y, Z, Z, Z. And you'd more or less just have like a whole bunch of different valuation metrics. You'd have a whole bunch of different fundamental metrics, which would be like new products, going into new markets, looking at the management of the company, or the management, the management solid. And obviously with this, it's kind of like, if my stocks are trading at a lower valuation than what I expect them to be at, I'm just going to be buying more. The reason why I haven't bought more of the companies that have dropped is because I've put over £120,000 into private equity investments, which has taken up all of my money. But by the end, well, in fact, now is when I'm going to start pumping money back into my ISA and buying all the companies that have dropped 25%. I'm going to buy them cheaper at cheaper rates, in hopes that in the long term, because I'm investing for the long term, in this 5-year period, I'm going to look back at these investments and be like, damn, that was almost like buying Amazon 20 years ago, or that was almost like buying Facebook 10 years ago, which is what people always talk about, is this extreme hyper growth, which happens with innovation companies, is what you could call them.
Yeah.
On the other end, go
on, Chiz, go on.
I was going to say, on the other end of, obviously you're talking about losses, what would you say your biggest actual gain is? Like, what's the most profit you've ever made, if you want to obviously disclose that?
Yes, the most profit I've made is in my biggest portfolio, and that was like over a £250,000 gain. And that was just like profits alone. For that one, it's like, damn, like I still haven't even liquidated the position, because again, I feel like it is taking a hit because of this like whole inflation being higher than expected and increasing increasing month on month. So yeah, that's my biggest gain so far. But obviously, when I cash it in, I'll have to pay capital gains. One thing which is exciting, is private equity. To be fair, I haven't made any money from it yet, because it's obviously, stock markets are liquid. You can kind of buy today, sell today. Whereas private equity is more fixed. It's like an illiquid way of investing. It's kind of like, you buy today, you then have to sell in 4 years, or you're forced to sell in 4 years. That's like how we exit our investment. And with that, it's invested 120,000. And the prediction is for the company that we've invested in, it's called Supper. It's a food delivery company in London, and they have like unique contracts. So when they work with a company, they will work with that company, no one else will. So you'll never see it on Deliveroo, you'll never see it on Just Eats, and it's usually like the Michelin star restaurants. Okay. And this company is due to like more than tenfold, which means that this £120,000 investment would then be like millions, if not more. But this is predicted. I mean, the company could collapse. Could just spend more money than what they're making, and that could be the end of it. That could be the end of 120,000. I hope not, but it honestly could happen. So yeah, it's kind of like that then could be my biggest win potentially, well, so far in my life. But again, that's 4 years. Anything could happen in that time. It could fail. It might not reach expectations. But the exit opportunity is for the company to potentially be bought by Amazon, because Amazon were interested, but the company were like, no, we want to be sold at a higher valuation if you want to buy in. And obviously that higher valuation is due to be tenfold in 4 years, hopefully, but we'll see what happens.
I just wanted to touch on time spent on your trading, because I think I've read somewhere online that for you, it was a case of, I think you were taking A levels at the time when you first started getting into it. And so how does it work? How much time, when you first got into it, how much time are you spending per day? Just to put it into perspective for people looking to get into it, how much time are you spending on it?
So when I first got into it, like really first started learning about it, it wasn't a lot of time at all. It was probably like an hour here, an hour there, just in the week. But then what had happened was I'd opened my first account under one of my friend's names. He was called Joseph. I wasn't old enough to obviously open an account. He'd opened one for me, and this was like a forex trading account. Deposited, I think, about £400, and we just kept trading it. And when we were trading it, it was like, damn, like it became really real at that point. So it was like, do you know what? Screw it. Let's just take this seriously. So it was like, forget everything else. Let's really just focus on this. So I mean, it was kind of like go to school, come back from school, and all of my time was more or less just spent on trading and nothing else. You eat, chill, etc. But it'd probably be like a good, I don't know, 5-6 hours at that, because it was like nothing else apart from this, and we made it work.
Okay. And what about now? How does, talk us through a day for you now?
A day for me is honestly, now it's more or less I can keep myself busy, not only because of the trading, but because I've got like other businesses and stuff now as well. Obviously, if it was just to be the trading and investing, I don't really spend much time at all. Probably like 2-3 hours a day, only because I feel like I need to. If I wanted to, I could most definitely spend a lot less. The only reason why I spend more is just because what else would I be doing? I'll just be chilling, to be fair. When I had my own office, however, back in Milton Keynes, I do have an office in Birmingham, but I've only been there like twice in like 2 months. But when I had my office back in Milton Keynes, it was like non-stop. I mean, I'd post on my story like graveyard shift, and I'd be in the office from like 9 till 11 or 9 till the next day, just trading 24/7 and not really having a break. Yeah, that most definitely wasn't really healthy. It was like a sort of unhealthy like addiction to kind of just working. And I sort of came to like a realization, step back a little bit. Now it's kind of like I'll wake up. In all honesty, I'm a morning person. Not every day I wake up at like 7-8 a.m. Let's like Sundays I can't be asked. I'll wake up at like 11-12. Sort of just I always check the markets. I always check pre-market data, because I invest in American companies. Pre-market is kind of just like before market opens. You can check where stock prices are maybe trading at. So I'll usually check pre-market, sort of plan for market open, and then kind of take a step back. Other than that, it's kind of just in and out of the day, I'll just be checking certain forex markets depending on which market is actually open, whether it's like UK market, etc. In all honesty, I don't really spend much time at all working. I find myself on mainly phone calls throughout the day, calling different people I'm working with, etc. I've got 2 of my friends, Jake and Joel. I'm more or less on call with them 24/7. I would say just building a new business that we've set up, and that business is essentially helping other businesses like kind of grow. We use different methods for that. And just recently we've landed a company which turns over $35 million a year. And so it's like we need to spend a lot of time in contact just to make sure that the client's happy, etc. And recently, well, in fact, we've been in talks with a phone company. In fact, you'll probably know them. I'll just say the brand. I don't know whether I can or I can't.
Okay.
So they're called Xiaomi, and they have obviously a 50 or $500 billion valuation. Wow. And obviously if we land them, then that's big. So it's kind of just like we're constantly just on calls and stuff in and out of them. So that's kind of what it is now, mainly calls more so than anything else.
So for your family then, I mean, some of the numbers you're talking about in terms of whether it be business opportunities, setting up business with your friends, some of these numbers for the majority of normal people, they're crazy. So for your family and your friends then, this almost quick rise of, wow, okay, your life's basically changed. You know, you're not doing A levels now. I don't think you're doing university. You know, is it a case for you that like, are your family surprised by this? Are your friends surprised by this? Or was this unexpected?
Most definitely. I mean, like whenever something happens, I make an investment or just anything, it's kind of like, damn, like you're really doing this. Like my parents, at first it was kind of like, whenever I made my first like few thousand, they were kind of just like, no, cash it in, only invest your profits. But for me, it was like, I had such a strong belief and such a strong, like, when you've done so much and you started up so many businesses and done all valuations and investments, like, no, I'm going all in. Like, I think it was, how many weeks ago was it now? Like a few weeks ago when I made my private equity investment, I'm going to be so honest. It was like, I was investing most of the money I had, like in my bank accounts. I think at one point I had like less than 5,000. I was at the brokest point I'd ever been, because like all of my money is invested. It was like, well, what have I actually got? But then obviously we recouped quite quickly, just sorted out all my cash flows and stuff. But yeah, it's still a surprise. Even to myself, sometimes it's like, I would have never imagined myself putting this much money into like a high risk speculative investments. Like, no, like that would have been stupid. But for me, it's kind of just like, I've kind of come away from all of the, let me buy this and that and that. And it's more just like, now I kind of just want to sort of fulfill my potential, sort of see where I can go, build some type of legacy, started a YouTube channel, where kind of took a break from that, went traveling a little bit, but it's more just like self-fulfillment and like life fulfillment. So it's kind of like buying all of this designer clothes and stuff, just bullshit. But like, let me see what else I can get into now. Let me see what I can actually do with like my knowledge and stuff. I'm still going to buy designer clothes. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh no, I'll never do that. Because why not? Like, I like certain things, so I'm just going to grab it. But yeah, man, it's kind of just like a big life realization now that like I've really got something going. So let me
just
really
talking about you in particular, then, do you see this as something anyone can do, or do you feel like you have to have a certain mindset for this to work?
See, with investing and trading, it's like there's so many different things in which you can invest in. There's so many different things in which you can trade in. There's always going to be something for someone. Like, if you don't have a lot of time, you don't want to research stocks, you don't have to. You can simply just invest in index funds, such as the S&P 500, which compounds 10% year on year, or 11. God knows what it is. Everyone tells you different figures, 8%, 10%. It depends, obviously, whether you look at it from a decadely basis, etc. But you look at it over the past decade, I reckon it probably does about 10, 11% a year. Don't quote me on that though, but roughly. And it's like, if you were to start off with £20,000, you invested it into the S&P 500, it compounded that, I think, let's say it compounded 12% year on year. After a 40-year period, obviously you are late, quite later on in life, but regardless, 40-year period, by default, you're going to be a millionaire. You're going to have about, I think it was like 1.6, 1.8 million. Again, don't quote me on it. I'm not going to try to do the maths.
Crazy
but regardless, yeah, big numbers. And it's like, all you need to do to slow down or to increase that rate in which you then make your million is add more money or get a higher return. If you start seeing big returns, you might actually then be motivated to look into stocks to pick to get that higher return. Likewise, you could then just add more money monthly basis, weekly basis, or even just annual basis, whatever's good for you, to be fair. So
okay, then. So again, just going a little bit on the mindset sort of thing. Again, it comes to me that there's almost like a self-confidence coming out of you that a lot of people don't have. Is this something you feel like you've developed over time after you've seen trades work, or is this something you feel like you've had since when you were dancing back before you even started any of this?
Okay, so somewhat definitely since I was dancing. I mean, you don't really start something unless you're confident in your abilities to actually like fulfill it. But obviously in dancing, it was like, damn, like I would have to be in central London at 10 a.m. or 4:10 a.m. and we were doing laps around. It was sometimes even earlier than that, but we would just do like laps around the studio before, and you have to do like pull-ups and just like long workouts before we actually start dancing. So it's kind of like the effort that went into that to then become successful and to start like traveling the world and doing like shows and actually getting paid and stuff was like intense. And going into forex, obviously looking at millionaires online and whatnot and like financial gurus and stuff, it's like, I want to live that guru lifestyle. So it's like, damn. I'm expecting there to be a lot of work and having to go into it. So it's most definitely a lot of work, and in terms of developing that mindset, it somewhat was there from obviously when I started dancing, but it has most definitely developed a lot more. Like before, I was like really cautious with my investments. Now it's kind of like, okay, cool. I've got my conviction in a company. I've done what the financial valuations I actually want to do for that company. I believe in it, checked out the CEOs, looked at interviews online, it's all good. I'm just going all in. If it dips, I'm going to add more. If the company changes fundamentally in terms of it loses its CEO and has a new CEO, I don't like the CEO, I might cash in. And if a product fails, then again, I might cash in. If nothing of that has happened and the company is fundamentally the same, I'm going to keep plowing in more money. I could lose it all, couldn't really care. In all honesty, I've got my conviction. I believe in my company. I've seen enough now to the point where it's like, okay, cool. Let me just hold for this 5-year period and ride out for the long term.
Okay, so also one thing I want to touch on is I've seen, obviously, I think you've been featured on the Sun, the Daily Mirror, the Telegraph, the LADbible. These are all sort of, you know, a big thing, especially for younger people.
Yeah.
How does it look for you for the future then? Is this a case of this is it, or do you feel like you want to go again and there's a lot more you need to do? You know, talking to people, advising, whatever it is.
So in all honesty, I feel like there's a lot more I want to do. Like, obviously, one of my friends was describing it the other day, like, bro, you've completed story mode, you're just doing all these side missions and just having fun and stuff. But in all honesty, I don't even feel like it's like the end of story. There's like a lot I want to do in terms of like legacy building and stuff, and even just like helping like others in a point where like I don't need to sell a course, because that's not really necessary, to be fair. But there's a lot that I actually like really want to do. So it's most definitely like nowhere near the end. I'm still going to keep investing, trading, etc. But in all honesty, I just feel like there's a lot more to come, to be fair.
Touching on the news outlets as well, which was like the first one that approached you, and when they approached you, were you just like, why the hell? Like,
yeah,
it's kind of expect it.
So this was when I was featured on the Daily Mirror. That was the very, very first one. Again, it was kind of just like me constantly posting trades, constantly posting my results on Instagram, got reached out to, and then from there it's kind of like, let's jump on a call, let's see what you're actually doing, and like this could be something. And sort of from there it's like, damn, like this really happened. And I think it was literally the day after the interview, sort of the article came out, and then obviously from there it was like the same article just reposted on the Sun, LADbible, etc., and it's just like, damn, like this is really happening. And I think from there, like initially the response was good, but then obviously what had happened is, no, this guy's a drug dealer, this guy's this guy's that, this guy's going to come out of a course, etc., he doesn't do what he says he does, etc. And it was kind of like, okay, interesting. And from there, it was kind of just like, damn, let me just jump on YouTube. Sort of, one of my friends was like, bro, let's do an interview. We did it. And then immediately after, it was like, cool, private equity. Let me just start documenting my journey from now onwards. Had a private equity investment, 20,000. People are saying what I'm doing is not legit, or I'm not doing what I say I'm doing. So it's like, cool, let me just make the transaction like live on my phone. Made the transaction, went from there, and from there I didn't really mind, because I guess all of the people saying that you're fake or whatever kind of just like died down, as you don't really hear from them anymore, and it just really went from there, to be fair.
Is there one news outlet you'd want to feature on as well?
There was one news outlet that what?
Is there one news outlet that you'd want to be featured on out of every single one, like Forbes, Business Insider? Is there one that you're like, if they contact me, then yeah?
I guess Forbes is probably a big one. But I guess at the same time, it's just being at that level whereby it's like, cool, they really want to feature you or whatever. But now that one would be exciting. I feel like the response from that would be crazy, because it's like Forbes, you've got all the like millionaires on the website, etc. So it's like, we just have to wait and see for the future, to be fair. But there's no indication that it could happen, will happen, won't happen. But regardless, I think I'm just going to stay on this kind of like legacy building path, and then just see what I can make of it. Stay on YouTube, keep going to like different places and speaking about my journey, advice, answering questions, and just seeing what I can make of it, to be fair.
So as we wrap this up then, if I had to ask you straight up, advice for people, forget trading, forget stocks, because anyone can be successful in any sort of route they sort of go down. For you, what advice would you say for anyone to be successful? What 5 things do you think are needed to get to a position where, wow, this is a comfortable position to be in, basically?
So for one, initially I would say like most definitely take risks. If I didn't take risks from early on in terms of even just setting up a website, because I didn't want to pay the £30 monthly fee or anything of that sort, because I hate like recurring expenses, in honesty. Like I'm the last person that's going to pay £30 for a website that's unnecessary. Like my business now, we've closed a client that generates $35 million in revenue per year, and we don't have a website. We don't need it. We just have proof of concept, to be fair, and a good portfolio. But most definitely take risks. Second, I would say, I believe that obviously, yeah, you can get lucky at times. Like I got lucky investing in stocks, but at the same time, it's like I did learn. And so don't believe that everything is luck. Like actually sort of be that forward driver. Like don't sort of procrastinate on this idea that, okay, cool, one day I'm just going to get lucky and you know, all my prayers are going to come true and stuff like that. Like pray, stay motivated, etc. But at the same time, actually work towards your goals. So take action and kind of just avoid procrastination, because even in the position I'm in now, in all honesty, when I first got my apartment, I didn't do anything. I barely made any money for like couple of weeks, just because it's like, oh, I just want to sort of make this place look good or whatever and just chill, to be fair. So that was me just kind of touring around the area and experiencing what Birmingham is like, to be fair. Third, I don't know. I would just say stay motivated, but at the same time, try to learn more, because I know it's easy to like read books on motivation and how to think like a millionaire or whatever. But at the same time, it's like a lot of people ask me what book should I read or etc. And it's like, don't read anything, like learn market concepts. And I think this is the same for any kind of business. Like for example, with e-commerce, it's like, cool, you could read a book that tells you pick the winning product, have a beautiful website, etc. That's all common knowledge. What really matters in e-commerce is data sets. As soon as you have a client or a set of customers or a demographic of customers that converts, all you need to do is find something to sell to them. If you've got, I don't know, middle-aged women with kids who are, I don't know, white or black or Asian or whatever, that buy a certain type of products, open up another store, put other products in them and sell to that same demographic, because you know that demographic converts. You might need to test different times, different dates, different days. But after that testing, you then have even more data. So then you can probably sell to more clients or different types of clients. Fourth is more, don't be scared to take risks. I don't want to repeat myself. I want to give like good advice.
If you can't think of 5, that's fine.
Again, I would say,
yeah.
Cool. Do you know what? I'll leave it at that. But again, like if anyone's got any questions for advice or whatever, feel free to just like drop a message on Instagram and I'll reply.
I think one thing everyone needs to sort of bear in mind, one thing I've taken from this, guys, everything you seem to be doing, Adam, is I don't even know if you realize how in depth you're going. And I think that's almost a good thing, because like I said to you, before in the interview, like so many people make decisions based off, like a feeling, or okay, I might just go and do this. If it doesn't work, I'm just going to sort of give up. But it seems to me like you spoke about risk taking being a big thing for you, but I think everyone needs to take on, just keep on going and keep trying to learn. Because I feel like if you keep learning and you keep trying new things, luck almost finds you. Does that make sense?
That's most definitely what it is.
Yeah.
Because if I didn't keep sort of adapting my investment strategy, and I was like, do you know what, dividends are cool. I'm getting paid out of passive income, and it's like I might get a £100 dividend here, £100 dividend there. It's like that's not really financial freedom. But then switching it up into the growth stock sector and adapting my strategy is really what actually like took me to a whole new level and changed my life, essentially, is what you could say.
Brilliant, mate. It's such a good story, mate, honestly, because it's so good for younger people to see someone who's how quickly it's changed. It's not like it's taking you 15 years. Do you know what I mean?
Honestly,
when you want, do you know what I mean? Which is crazy. Before we sort of wrap this up, mate, would you mind explaining the giveaway and how we're working that, just for our viewers?
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the giveaway for anyone interested is that if you have any sort of interest in trading whatsoever, I'm actually going to offer you the opportunity to trade risk-free and have your losses covered directly by myself. Again, it will all be contracted and you'll be completely safe. We'll make sure you're only trading with an FCA-regulated brokerage and no offshore brokerages, etc. But essentially, you open up your own trading account. No money is sent to me. You sign the contract just so you know that you're protected and that I'm actually going to cover any losses that you incur. And should you make a profit and not actually make a loss, then again, that entire profit is yours. I don't take any kind of cut, commission, or fee from you. And that's just essentially the giveaway that I want to offer to people.
Appreciate that, Adam. Like I said, guys, if anyone's got any questions for Adam, whether it be via him on Instagram, email, whatever it is, I'm sure he'll be more than happy to answer. And likewise for me and Chiz, anything that we want, you guys want us to feed into him, we're more than happy to do that. And we really appreciate you coming on, mate, and kind of giving us I know I've taken a lot from this interview, so I imagine a lot of other people will as well.
Honestly.
In terms of the opportunity, guys, as well, also really looking to doing that. Like, it sounds, even when you presented it to me and Tammy, I was even like, oh, you know what, I might have to try and do this myself.
Yeah,
Like,
honestly, feel free to jump on. Yeah, like I mean, any questions, feedback, etc. is cool. We'll take it all in, to be fair, because again, we want to educate, but educate for free. We don't want to charge anyone for anything, to be fair. Just do it completely differently, because people's expectation of me sort of being a sellout or etc. It's like we're just going to eradicate that and do the complete opposite thing, to be fair, because why not? Fuck it. Yeah, that's what we're trying to do. So yeah, if anyone's interested in the opportunity, definitely take part. Definitely add some rules to it. They'll be in the description below. Like, subscribe to both of our channels, follow the Instagram page, like, comment, and just share your thoughts. Again, any questions, drop me a message. And I appreciate you guys for the opportunity to come here and talk, to be fair.
Thank you, man. Honestly, Adam, it's been amazing talking to you. Everyone watching definitely thinks, wow, this guy is just phenomenal. Even to know that you're from Milton Keynes as well, so you're local. Well,
yeah.
So yeah, but thanks, guys. Just watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow the every link in the description to join the giveaway. And yeah, cheers.
Perfect.